Hello and welcome to section 2, in which we will be creating advanced GUIs with Python and tkinter. First, we will use tab controls to organize our GUI. Then we will be using Python lists for data, and we will display the data in the GUI. After that, we will add images to the GUI. Next, we will turn our code into object-oriented code using classes. And in the end, we will test the GUI using the unit test framework that comes with Python. In this first video, we will organize our GUI using tab controls. We'll be using notebooks to create those tabs. We'll be using more label frames to group related widgets together. We'll be creating a scroll text widget. We'll be using some Python code to get the text from web pages, and we'll display that in the scroll text widget. And basically, we are building upon our GUI from the previous section, extending it. In order to better organize our widgets and to have enough space for them, using a tab control is a great way to go. The tab control is a themed tkinter notebook. We create it by calling the class constructor, passing in our GUI reference as the parent during creation. We save a reference to the newly created notebook in a variable. So we notice already TTK stands for themed tkinter. It's notebook, pass in the GUI reference from here. That's our GUI, and let's call this tab control. And in order to, that creates the tab control. So now we also have to add tabs. And one way to go is to use frames. Frames are good. So after creating the tab control via the notebook, we create tabs, and we just start with one. So it's a frame, and we have to add the tab we just created to our tab control. The next thing we have to do, we have to pack the tab control. That's the pack layout manager. It's not the grid one, but we have to do this, otherwise the tab control and its tab won't be visible. So if you create something and nothing shows up, make sure you use the pack thing on it. You say fill both in both directions. So now that we have a new tab, we're gonna use this one, tab 1. We use this one as the parent. So for the button, the parent now is tab 1, no longer the GUI. And the same for the entry and so on. So everything that's yellow here, you can see that's the parent, which is now our tab 1. So we are creating a frame here, and let's just run it and see what it looks like. So here we have the tab, just one for now. That's the first tab in this area, which is the tab control. Our two buttons and our two entry widgets, they are within the frame we created. It's a frame without a label, but you can see this thin line here, that's actually the frame. And we gave the GUI a certain size, so the frame takes up all the space. And our label is here too. And still, if we type something in here, or we don't type anything in here, we click me and it's gone. And we can say test, and it goes back here. So this all still works, only now our 5 widgets are in this frame, which is part of tab 1. Once we have the tab control in place, it's very easy to create more tabs, add them to it. So here we create tab 2, and this time instead of a regular frame, we make it a label frame. A label frame is a frame that can have a label, so we give it some text. There's a text attribute here, and for what we do later, I call it web page source. So again, we create tab 2, it's a label frame, and we use the tab control and add tab 2 to the tab control. And that's all. That's just 2 lines of code to add another tab to the existing first tab. So when we run it now, we can see that we have 2 tabs. And that's the regular frame, and this is the label frame. That's all label here. The text of the label frame, web page source. Very easy. So now that we have a second tab, we want to do something with it. So the way I went here is I created a function to kind of keep the code a little bit cleaner and separate from each other. And it's this guy here. It expects a parent. Parent will be the parent for the widget. So the parent is tab 2. That's how we place this widget onto tab 2. And we could pass in tab 1, then this guy would end up on tab 1. So very simple. So parent is on tab 2. We want to create a scrolled text widget. And in order to use that, we have to import scroll text and then call the constructor on it. So lowercase scroll text, and then here with some uppercases. And the parent is being passed in, and we're passing in tab 2. That's where we want it. And in the beginning, we set a width and a height. It's hard coded for now. just a good way to start. Just start with something. And this one is good here, wrap as tk-enter word. So once we display data within the scroll text widget, we will wrap around words. So when text wraps, it won't get cut off in the middle of a word by character. So it will like stop with a full word. So when we run this now, you can see that this label frame got bigger because tk-enter adjusts automatically, and this is what we gave it here. So now we put the scroll text widget onto tab 2, and it has width of 48 pixels and height of 8. So you can see that this automatically made this guy bigger as well. That's how it works, dynamically adjusts itself. Well, an empty widget, like an empty tab, is boring, so we added a scroll text widget onto it, and that by itself doesn't do too much yet either. So one thing about Python that's great is, of course, lots of functionality with very few lines of code. So we can open a web page, and we can import URL open from urllib.request in Python 3. I think in Python 2.7 it was slightly different. Anyway, this works for Python 3. And all we have to do is we use URL open and pass in a web page and open it. And then what we have to do is just read it. In this function, I return what that page displays. And then we call this function from our function that creates a scroll text. And then we have to use insert twice. So we have to use on the scroll text widget, we have to use insert and then tk-enter. I mean, I'm still abbreviated tk-enter as tk. So I use this alias here. So we do tk, use this constant. So we say we want to insert into the scroll text widget. And what do we want to insert? We want to insert text. And text is a variable that just get filled in by the return of the read URL function. So this is the URL I'm passing in. So let's run this. You have to have an internet connection that's working. So this is what we get back. This is so we get back from URL open the URL here. And if you scroll down to the bottom, we can see what it is. And what this is a documentation for Python. And so if we type this in here into a browser, this is what we get. That doesn't look quite the same as what we see in our GUI, but what URL open returns is if you right click on the page, go to view page source, and then open it up, and that's behind the scene, that's what that is. So we can see here, for example, Sphinx 184 at the very bottom, and when we scroll down in our scrolling text widget, we can see the same here, Sphinx, this HTML tag. So this is really the same data. So we are just using the URL open function to fill in our scroll text widget, because if there's not enough data, then there's nothing to scroll down to. So that's just an example. In this video, we use tab controls to organize our GUI.